The Last Starfighter wasn't just another space adventure, it was the first film to ditch miniatures for full-blown CGI dogfights, a gamble that nearly crashed the whole production. Behind the arcade glow and starships lay chaos written in pixels. The star we got wasn't the first choice. One scene was so dark it got melted down to scrape a PG rating. These are 20 weird facts about cinema's boldest experiment. The seed for The Last Starfighter wasn't scribbled in a studio boardroom. Screenwriter Jonathan Betuel stood watching a teenager chase a high score, sweat on his forehead, eyes locked on the screen. Betuel wondered, what if this wasn't just a game? What if it was a test? That thought became the film's hook. Alex Rogan beats the game only to learn it's a hidden exam to find starfighters for galactic war. The arcade craze of the early 80s made it impossible to ignore. Betuel's script turned quarter-feeding obsession into destiny. Alex Rogan wasn't always a trailer park kid. Early drafts unfolded in leafy suburbia with picket fences and tidy lawns. Universal worried it felt too close to E.T., another boy next door who looks to the stars. Screenwriter Jonathan Betuel made a bold change, dropping Alex into a dusty trailer park. This gave the movie grit, rooted his family in working-class struggle, and created striking contrast when Alex found himself among alien armadas. The trailer park added community, neighbors who cheered his starfighter victory, making his leap to the stars feel bigger and more heroic. Lance Guest became Alex Rogan, but Universal wanted a rising star with name recognition. Michael J. Fox was considered during his Family Ties breakout, but his sitcom schedule kept him locked in. Eric Stoltz also tested before landing Mask and briefly Back to the Future. Even Maggie's role was uncertain. Jennifer Jason Leigh floated around before Catherine Mary Stewart landed it through undeniable chemistry with Guest. In the end, authenticity won over star power. Guest and Stewart weren't celebrities yet, but together they felt believable as two kids caught in something far bigger. Before Nick Castle signed on, Universal courted James Cameron, fresh off The Terminator and hungry for his next sci-fi project. For a moment, Cameron might have taken the helm, but schedules clashed, and his ambitions pulled him toward Aliens and the Abyss instead. A Cameron-directed Last Starfighter could have leaned darker, grittier, and more technically ambitious. Instead, we got Castle's fairy tale optimism balanced with groundbreaking CGI, a completely different vision than Cameron's trademark intensity. History split at that fork, with Cameron building Titans while Castle built a video game that reached the stars. Nick Castle wasn't just The Last Starfighter's director. Horror fans knew him as the man behind Michael Myers' Mask in Halloween. Castle was John Carpenter's college friend, called upon when Carpenter needed a silent, menacing presence. Hidden behind that mask, Castle became The Shape, one of horror's most enduring icons. In 1984, he made his own leap, from faceless killer to sci-fi dreamer. With The Last Starfighter, he swapped Carpenter's shadows for computer-generated starlight, proving he could move from horror minimalism to high-concept spectacle while crafting stories about hope, love, and destiny among the stars. In 1984, space battles relied on miniatures, model ships on wires filmed against starfields. The Last Starfighter threw this out, gambling on untested, full-blown computer graphics. 27 minutes of film, nearly every ship and dogfight, was built inside machines rather than model shops. That machine was the Cray XMP supercomputer, one of only 6 on Earth. Each frame contained over 250,000 polygons, far beyond what audiences had seen. When animators tried rendering the Gunstar's ultimate weapon, the spinning Death Blossom, computers nearly choked, crashing repeatedly. This fragile gamble rewrote cinema's future, paving paths for Jurassic Park and Terminator 2. Zur, the power-hungry villain, was meant to prove his cruelty by frying a spy's brain with his scepter, live on a giant monitor. The scene was filmed completely, glowing skin, twitching body, the works. But director Nick Castle pulled it back to keep the PG rating safe, trimming the sequence to almost nothing, just a flash of red on the victim's forehead. The irony, The Last Starfighter came out weeks before the PG-13 rating debuted. Had Castle waited, he could have kept the full scene intact. Instead, one of the film's most shocking moments was melted down into a blink-and-you'll-miss-it shot. On screen, Centauri's star car looked like something ripped from pulp sci-fi, sleek, shiny, futuristic. On set, it was a nightmare. The car was noisy, clunky, and embarrassingly slow. Every dramatic entrance required crews wrestling with mechanics just to get it rolling straight. The flashy golden doors jammed, the fiberglass body rattled, and what looked like effortless speed was often careful camera angles and editing tricks. Nick Castle later admitted shooting with the car was more frustration than fun. It was a cosmic hot rod built for screens but barely roadworthy, a perfect symbol of Starfighter's charm. Dazzling in imagination, clumsy in execution. Centauri, the sly recruiter who lures Alex into the stars, was written with Robert Preston in mind. Audiences knew him as Harold Hill in The Music Man, a fast-talking salesman with sparkle in his eye. Centauri was essentially Hill reborn in outer space, a con-man turned cosmic guide. For Preston, this role was special, his final theatrical performance, a curtain call wrapped in stardust. His charm and theatrical timing gave The Last Starfighter its heartbeat, grounding CGI spectacle with old-school Hollywood charisma. When Centauri drives off in his flashy star car, it wasn't just a character exiting, it was Preston's farewell, a Broadway legend's final bow among the stars. Before becoming Wesley Crusher on Star Trek: The Next Generation, Wil Wheaton almost debuted in The Last Starfighter. Cast as Lewis's friend in the trailer park, he filmed several lines hanging around Alex Rogan's world. But when the movie hit theaters, nearly all his scenes were gone. Wheaton was left as a blurry background kid, barely noticeable unless you knew to look. His family joked he was technically in the movie, but the real break never came. 2 years later, Wheaton landed Stand By Me, followed by Star Trek. The boy lost in the editing room became a sci-fi icon after all, proof that missed roles are sometimes stepping stones. In 1984, kids poured out of theaters dreaming of one thing: the arcade game. On screen, Alex Rogan's victory at the Starfighter cabinet launched him to the stars. Surely there had to be a real machine waiting in pizza parlors and bowling alleys. Atari even teased it in the movie's credits and built working prototypes, full cabinets with glowing controls and gameplay mimicking the film's space battles. But the dream died before reaching arcade floors. The video game crash of 1983 had gutted Atari. The release was scrapped. 6 years later, an NES cartridge appeared under the Last Starfighter name, but it was just a reskinned version of another game called Uridium. The beta unit, Alex Rogan's android double left on Earth was never meant to be more than a quick gag, fumbling through small-town life while the real Alex fought in the stars. But test audiences loved Beta's awkward humor, strange smile, and stilted movements. The filmmakers listened and expanded his role with new scenes. For audiences, it was a win. For Lance Guest, it was hell. By reshoot time, he'd cut his hair, forcing him into a stiff wig that never sat right. The prosthetics were thick and hot, trapping heat until he nearly fainted. Guest later joked that Beta nearly broke him, proof that screen comedy often comes from someone else's pain. Alex and Maggie weren't always Alex and Maggie. In early drafts, they were called Skip and Penny, names that made them sound like cartoon characters instead of real teenagers. Director Nick Castle hated it. To him, the story wasn't a campy comic strip, but about two ordinary kids thrust into extraordinary circumstances. He pushed for more grounded names that felt authentic to the small-town trailer park setting. The change worked. Alex and Maggie sounded like people you could actually know, kids you might find at a gas station or corner diner. Their names helped anchor the fantasy in reality, reminding audiences this was still a love story about small-town dreamers. One bold idea almost gave The Last Starfighter the most unusual studio logo in Hollywood history. Instead of opening with Universal's classic globe, filmmakers wanted to swap it for Rylos, the alien planet at the story's heart. The idea was to plunge audiences straight into the cosmos, blurring lines between studio identity and cinematic world. But Universal executives balked, fearing it would confuse audiences and break one of branding's most sacred rules: never tamper with the logo. The plan was scrapped, and the film opened with Earth after all. It's a tiny what-if, the kind of creative swing that could have cemented the movie's outsider vibe from frame one. The Gunstar, the Last Starfighter's iconic starship, was unlike anything audiences had seen in 1984. Designed by visionary artist Ron Cobb, who had already shaped Alien, Conan the Barbarian, and Back to the Future, it wasn't kit-bashed from model parts like Star Wars ships. It was conceived and rendered fully inside a computer. Cobb's design leaned into sleek, angular symmetry, perfectly suited for the digital canvas. When rendered in the film's CGI sequences, the Gunstar felt like the future, a ship born from polygons instead of glue and plastic. For fans, it became one of cinema's first truly digital icons, standing alongside the X-Wing and Millennium Falcon. The DNA of Tron pulsed through The Last Starfighter. Many visual effects artists had just come off Disney's groundbreaking 1982 experiment, carrying their digital expertise to Universal. Even unused concept designs from Alien slipped into the mix, shaping the look of Rylos and its alien armadas. This lineage gave The Last Starfighter its distinctive aesthetic: glossy, arcade-like, and slightly surreal. It didn't look like the dirty, lived-in Star Wars universe. It looked like something you could almost play, a video game brought to life. That choice was divisive at the time, but in hindsight, it cemented the movie's unique identity as something stranger and shinier than its peers. Like Labyrinth, Blade Runner, and Raiders of the Lost Ark, The Last Starfighter got the Marvel Comics treatment. In 1984, Marvel published a 3-issue adaptation, bringing the film's story to life in bold, colorful panels. For many fans, it was the only way to relive the adventure once the movie left theaters. The adaptation included Ron Cobb's sleek ship designs and even extended certain scenes, leaning into the pulpy cosmic flavor Marvel thrived on. Over time, the miniseries became a collectible artifact of 80s sci-fi marketing, a reminder of how comic shops once carried the torch for films that hadn't yet hit VHS. For a movie built on arcade DNA, its comic afterlife was perfectly fitting. Universal wanted The Last Starfighter to be its own Star Wars. The studio dreamed of toys, sequels, and a sprawling merchandising empire. Tie-in products were planned, prototypes sketched, and expectations set sky high. But the box office didn't deliver juggernaut numbers executives craved. The film doubled its $15 million budget with $28.7 million worldwide, but compared to George Lucas's Empire, it looked like small change. Merchandising plans fizzled, toys vanished before production, and the hoped-for franchise sputtered. For all its ambition, The Last Starfighter couldn't escape Star Wars' long shadow. It wasn't a galaxy-dominating empire, it was a cult story waiting to be rediscovered by future generations. At first, The Last Starfighter seemed destined to fade. It wasn't a flop, but wasn't a smash either, just a modest sci-fi oddity in the crowded summer of 1984. But then came VHS and cable reruns late at night. Audiences who missed it in theaters discovered it at home, rewinding the arcade-like battles, quoting Robert Preston's sly one-liners, and daydreaming about high scores that could change their lives. By the 90s, it had graduated from forgotten experiment to cult classic. For many, it wasn't just another sci-fi film, it was the movie that convinced them computers could build worlds as big as their imagination. The Last Starfighter conquered the long game. Two decades after its release, The Last Starfighter got an encore nobody saw coming. Not on film, but on stage. In 2004, New York's Storm Theatre reimagined the interstellar adventure as a campy, full-fledged musical. With galactic ballads, duets about destiny, and chorus numbers echoing arcade bleeps, the production leaned into the film's pulpy charm. It wasn't a Broadway juggernaut, but it didn't need to be. For fans, the musical was proof that The Last Starfighter had carved out a cult audience strong enough to cross genres. The Gunstars battles had once been rendered in cutting-edge CGI. Now they were sung under spotlights, a bizarre but heartfelt reminder that the film's imagination was too big for one medium. The Last Starfighter began as a daydream in an arcade and became one of the first films proving computers could build worlds as vivid as models and matte paintings. It survived near misses, fragile technology, and studio doubts to become an unforgettable cult treasure. It never became the next Star Wars, but maybe that was the point. It was smaller, scrappier, stranger, and because of that, timeless. Check out our deep dive into Blade Runner's production secrets next.